On slide number 6 is a snapshot of, 1-year snapshot of the work that we've done at Coffee Creek. Gives a good idea of the number of people that we meet with and what their actual veteran status is. What we found is that approximately 58% of those that identify or self-identify as veterans, we find out that they're really not veterans in the Department of Corrections. So it looks like we have you hear about a lot of veterans being incarcerated, and part of the reason for trying to extract this data is to determine what the real number is, or approximate it at least. And so what we found is that 58% of the people on intake identify as veterans. We find out that they never even put the uniform on. And the remainder put on the uniform, and about 25% of them meet the statutory requirements to qualify for veteran VA benefits. So the number can be skewed. And then slide number 7, we had an initiative where we sent out a questionnaire to all those that had self-identified as veterans that were in the prison system. We took a snapshot in time, December of 2016. We sent questionnaires to every one of them. We had a return rate of we had about 600 out of the 2,100 surveys that we sent that were sent back. The majority, a lot of those were true veterans. And as you might imagine, if somebody sends you a piece of paper asking you for a veteran, if you're not a veteran, you may not return that piece of paper. And that's exactly what we found. But we did make the attempt to identify their true status for all that were incarcerated as of December 2016. And so sent out 2,100 and got about 600 slides back. So there's a picture of me. I really didn't lick all 2,100 of those things. That was my action picture. I sent it to Mitch, and he was concerned. He said, they got a machine that does that, right? But anyway, I just was trying to get an action shot. And then the other picture, there's Brittany Meltzer. She helped input that information into our database. So then on to slide 7. It's what we've been able to do from the surveys, as far as that snapshot of December 2016, all those veterans. We were able to identify and verify the status of 1,000, a little over half of them. And the reason, and the way we did it with a survey. That was some of it. And then other things, we had some records on them already. They'd already met with us, for instance, in our capacity as VSOs around the state. So we had some information on them. We could verify their status. We had DD-214s for them on file with the state. So we were able to verify the status of that many, about a little over half. And we also, just so you know, we estimate about 8% of those that are incarcerated in state and federal prisons are veterans. Sometimes you hear a larger number based on that skewed statistic that we had earlier. As we're starting to verify things, we're getting a more realistic sight picture of the number of people that are incarcerated and also qualify as veterans.
And I'm sorry, where's that come from? Where's that 8%? Is that federally, or is that Oregon after this study? Or?
It's an estimation. It's based on other states that have done similar population sizes. And then we're finding, as we are verifying, we haven't got to that true number yet, but it looks like that's an accurate number for us as well.
Okay.
And if I recall correctly, we're about 7% nationwide veterans population.
In the prison systems?
No, nationwide.
Oh, nationwide.
Nationwide, the population of the percentage of people who are veterans in the country, according to the census, is about 7% nationwide.
Okay. So we would mirror that a little bit in the prison system, although it's a tick up for veterans within the system.
And can you just go a little back further into it? What number were we using before? And I know one critique I've heard is that ODVA was using the number that Washington State was using under their system.
That was kind of a starting point because we didn't have an accurate picture. They had done some work, such as what we're doing now, to try and get an accurate number. And so we started there to get an idea. But initially, One of the reasons why my position was created, because we didn't have a way of assessing what the true number was and who was really a veteran and who wasn't. And so, so now my goal is to catch everybody on intake, which I can't quite do, but I come pretty close to it. Catch everybody on intake, and eventually we'll have an accurate number as people transition through intake. There's a population set out there that will, for instance, stay in the prison system. They're on life sentences or what have you. So we won't always have an accurate number, but as time goes on, that number will become more and more accurate. We'll be able to assess the true number.
And was that number previously around 10%?
I think it was even higher than that because it was based on that 58% that never put on the uniform. Okay. And so it looked excessively high. It looked like it, I think the number, Mitch, do you remember, was in the 25% or something like that. It looked like it was really high. And we were going, well, what's Oregon doing wrong? You know, that kind of, because they were self-identifying. And I don't know why they self-identify. We haven't really figured that out. We've, you know, some people think it's because they're hoping to get some sort of benefit on the inside, maybe on release. Some of them think that there's special treatment for veterans or whatever, so they identify as veterans, and then that's part of the reason why I go in and so the Department of Corrections has an idea on whether John Doe is a veteran or not, and what he might be eligible for on reentry. And there's also veteran groups, clubs, and that sort of thing within some of the facilities as well. So there's a good reason to.
And just if you can correct my understanding, I believe in order to qualify for veterans benefits, you just need one honorable period of service. So a service member who may have had multiple periods who's been discharged, and maybe their last one was maybe. That is correct. One period of honorable service will qualify dependent. Doesn't mean they'll qualify for a specific disability, because if they got it during a period of unhonorable service, okay, then they wouldn't qualify for service connection for that particular issue or what have you. But as a general rule, to be an honorable veteran, it is one period of service with a designated period of time that's changed over history, but right now it's 24 months of service unless you're medically released due to injury or something like that. There's a reason why it's less than 24 months. Okay. And can you tell us where where's a, I don't know, what's the proper term? Is it convicted or somebody, an incarcerated person? So okay. Somebody incarcerated, where are they at in the process when they get to Coffee Creek? Because some of those would have spent time in a county jail pending their trial, absolutely, right? So how soon are we getting involved? So the county veteran service officers in many counties, they're involved. They go to the jail. So while they're awaiting trial, sentencing, what have you, they'll have interaction with them. We have several counties that are pretty good about that. In fact, my colleague Marie Ramage is going to speak for a few minutes after I'm done to discuss Multnomah County's program. They have an individual, like the state, that's dedicated to justice-involved veteran outreach. So where do I get involved? By the time they get to Coffee Creek, they've had conviction and sentencing. Generally, it's within a couple weeks of the sentencing, and usually that's, you know, I have to report if they're going to have a reduction in benefits. I have a form that I work at the Department of Corrections to get that says the date that they were confined post conviction, because that's an important. That's when the reduction window starts, is at post conviction. So they don't lose time benefits for being in the jail. They lose it for being convicted, and it's on the 61st day after conviction. So I'll give you an idea. And generally, by the time I see them in Coffee Creek, they're about 2 to 3 weeks into that window. And so they haven't quite, in most cases, come to the 60-day point where they'll be reduced. Our problem there is that the VA is a little slow to respond. I probably don't need to tell anybody here that, just because of workload and the number of veterans we're talking about. But if I immediately send something off to them, it could be 6 months, or I've seen as long as 3 years before action is taken for reduction. So it's important that we start that as soon as we can to get the reduction going, provide as much information as possible to the Department of
from the Department of Corrections to the Department of Veteran Affairs, so they have all the information, so they make an informed decision when they finally get to that particular claim or that information on that veteran.
But nobody's at Coffee Creek who is still pending trial?
No.
Okay.
We have had some at Coffee Creek that are returned to court. You know, they'll show up on my list, and I go to look for them, and they've been sent back to the county, probably, I assume, in that case, for an additional charge or what have you. So they do sometimes take them back to the county, but they still show up on Department of Correction books.
Okay.
It's just they're not assigned a cell or housing unit, if you will. So, okay. And so, in the last 15 months, I've met with approximately 715 veterans or so. And the interview is quite simple. Did you ever serve in the military? And they say no. I say, did you go to basic training? Nothing like that. And if they say, when they say no again, then I'm okay. That's all I need. And that becomes a no. That's one of the red on that graph that I talked to you. They never served in uniform. And then, you know, so there's an interview. And then if they say they did, then I sit down with them and I spend time with them. I have a questionnaire that I fill out with them to assess their eligibility, potential eligibility for benefits, and also to address whether, if they're receiving benefits, what we need to do next to minimize the impact on them and on their families as far as reduction for benefits, filing for apportionment, which is where the family can get some of the money that is taken away from the veteran because of incarceration, and it goes to support the spouse and children.
Aren't there some benefits that also pertain to individuals who are part of NOAA or Merchant Marines?
That is correct. They're considered veterans, but not veterans of the armed forces. They're military veterans. So the benefits essentially are the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you check those statuses?
Oh yeah. Everybody that you know, self-identifies as a veteran, whatever the capacity is, I check with all of them if I can. Sometimes before I can get there, they're moved on to their next facility. Typically, somebody's at Coffee Creek for about 30 days. It could be 40. It just varies a little bit. But if they're a troublemaker, they're probably going to be gone in 10 to 15 days. They move them on and get them to where they need to go. So some of them I miss because of that. My window, I try to go a couple times a month, depending on whether I'm in the office or available to do that kind of thing. Sometimes they have lockdown, which limits my ability to converse with the veterans, although I go directly into the housing units, and sometimes if they have the right number of corrections officers on duty, I can have them pulled out of the cell and meet with them right there in the housing unit. So it just depends on the situation, but I try to get them all. I probably, in the last year, I would estimate maybe there's been 30 or 40 that I haven't met with. So I work pretty hard at it. It's pretty important to me, so I try to get out there and get it done. So. And what do we do for them? I talked about the reduction of benefits, if that applies, trying to get apportionment. I try to assess their needs. Sometimes I'm talking to a veteran with dishonorable discharge, for instance, of some sort, something other than honorable. And I tell them what's needed to try and do discharge upgrade, although we don't work it for them while they're in the prison system. But I said, well, you can start collecting evidence. You can get information from doctors, try to get a diagnosis, try to find out if military stressors contributed to the issues that are going on and may have led to the discharge. If they indicate that it's under don't ask, don't tell, or those types of things, I try to connect them with our LGBT coordinator. Those are things that I try to do. So anyway. And we've had a real recent push to try and connect them with education benefits with our new education specialist, Bob Small, and a couple other volunteers. We're developing information, and they can actually do voc rehab while they're in the prison system. And there's a lot of perceptions out there that that's not doable, but it is. So if they were injured, military, have a service-connected disability, they can actually use their time that they're down productively and maybe get an education to be beneficial and try to keep them out of the prison system. And so, as you might imagine, we have a desire to partnership and to try and make things go a little better for the veterans that transition in and out. So we want to help them on their transition on reentry. We want to help them get connected with community resources. So there's a big push to do that. Some of our future goals are to alert the counties for veterans that are coming their way when they're released. We generally have an idea where they're going to be released. They go back to the county where they fell. We also are trying to develop a template, if you will, that will ensure that the county, the parole and probation offices, maybe make it part of their checklist that require the veteran to connect with a veteran service officer to evaluate their eligibility for benefits, with the idea that our goal is to give them the maximum amount of resources to prevent them from being reincarcerated. And we've reached out to Mitch and Sharon, briefed the Oregon Association of Community Corrections Directors, and there's a great deal of interest in developing that template so that it can be used across the state. So that's an initiative that we're going to push pretty hard in the next few months. And then on the last slide, slide 12, that circle around these benefits, the idea here is to indicate to you the broad spectrum of those that are involved in trying to help reentry veterans access the benefits that they're eligible for. And due to time, I won't give a lot of scenarios there, but maybe I'll give you a couple vignettes. Oregon State Penitentiary has a veterans group out there. I took 2 people with me the last time I went out there about 3 weeks ago. We had a focus on education, Bob Smaller, education specialist, and then Andy Holbert from Western Oregon University. We went out there as a group to address any education type questions that they had. So we had a volunteer from the community. 2 ODVA members went out to meet with these veterans and try and address their questions they might have related to education benefits. And I also answer questions related to disability claims, those kinds of things. And then, you'll notice on this little chart here, the only circle that is not in yellow is faith-based organizations. And it's because I couldn't think of a specific instance where I've worked with faith-based organization to address the needs of a reentry veteran. I know that they do it, I just haven't worked with them directly. But hopefully this last slide will let you see the broad spectrum of people that are trying to help these folks as they re-enter society and help them contribute in a positive way. And again, with the ultimate goal that they contribute and they don't go back. We have a very good working relationship with county veteran service officers. In Umatilla County, which is a ways away for me to go out to Pendleton to visit Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution out there. It's hard for me to get out there, so I pick up the phone if I get an inquiry or something about a veteran out there, and I talk to the county veteran service officer, and he goes and visits. So we have this working relationship. Also, in